Ashley Rogers. I'm the executive director of the Whitney Plantation, and this event is a program of Whitney Plantation. We are going to begin our panel discussion in just a moment. And I would just like to introduce my two co-panelists here. So first of all, Connie Royster is an executive producer of this film. She's a consultant and advisor to nonprofits and individuals in education, arts, and culture. A graduate of Yale University, Connie went on to Rutgers Law School and has had a 25-year career in law, including as an associate at Paul Weiss and an assistant U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York. Her second career, Connie was a fundraiser for the Yale Environment School and served as director of development at the Divinity School. She sits on multiple boards, including Open Communities Alliance, a housing equity nonprofit. Connie is the niece and namesake of Judge Constance Baker Motley, a fellow of Jonathan Edwards College at Yale and a recipient of the prestigious Yale Medal. And Jessie Jaynes-Diming is a passionate community activist wanting to see change for the future. Born in Chicago, she lived there for 51 years before becoming a transplant to Tallahatchie County, Mississippi. She was a founding member of the Emmett Till Memorial Commission, preserving the story of Emmett Till, and she wants that story to be the cause for more healing and learning. So thank you so much, Constance and Jessie, for joining us here today. I'm going to ask my tech assistant if we can make sure that we have the spotlight on for this section of the event. I think we're seeing the full meeting here is the view that I have. So, and again, I'm Ashley Rogers. I'm the founding director of Whitney Plantation. I've led the museum for the past 12 years, and I'm a historian with a particular interest in race and labor in the 20th century South. And so I want to start this conversation with Constance as one of the executive producers of this film. Can you give us some background information on the film? How did it come to be made, and what was your role in making this film?
Well, thank you. First of all, I want to thank you for showing our film and for inviting me into this conversation. The director is Susanna Styron, and she's white. And she and I go back a very long time. We're very, very old friends. And the film came to be made from a series of coincidences, really. Um, Susanna had wanted to make a film about another white woman from Duck Hill, actually, the same place that these lynchings took place, and her name was Roxy Bolton. Now, Roxy is a woman who was way ahead of her time in women's rights. She was a civil rights, women's rights worker, and she was even written up her obituary in the New York Times with the heading Roxy Bolton, feminist crusader for equality, including in naming hurricanes. So she forced the government to stop just naming hurricanes after women and denigrating them when they were doing so. So she was a real fighter in her own right. Um, it was no secret that Roxy had actually witnessed these two lynchings as an 8-year-old and or 7, I can't remember exactly. And she never spoke about it. She held that experience to herself for so long, and she took it to the grave, basically. Susanna discovered Roxy but from her obituary in 1917. And when she did the research to maybe do a documentary about Roxy's amazing life, she came to a dead end because she wouldn't be able to discuss that part of Roxy's life where she witnessed these lynchings because no one knew how Roxy felt about it or what she remembered about it. Um, Fast forward, to Jan's effort, the narrator of our film, Jan's effort to learn about her own family's involvement in these lynchings. And she reached out to Roxy's family, um, and they told her, "We don't know anything. Roxy didn't tell us anything. She didn't talk about it. She held it in." But maybe Susanna Styron, who I know we knew was doing research on Roxy, she might be able to help you with your own family story. So Jan reached out to Roxy. Jan reached out to Susanna, and when Susanna heard her story, she thought, whoa, this is a really interesting story to tell, because Jan was trying to find out who participated in these lynchings. Was my family there? She was really trying to find the names so that she could say her family wasn't there because they wouldn't be listed. But of course, no names were listed, known it, just hundreds of people at the lynching. Um, so in 2021, I was on my own journey, kind of to go to civil rights locations, in part to pay homage to my aunt, who had been such a hero of the civil rights movement as a lawyer for the Legal Defense Fund, having litigated most of the higher education cases in the South in the 50s and the 60s before she was appointed to the federal bench as the first Black woman on the federal court. So I was really, as a result of the pandemic, having my own moments. And so I was doing a visiting to places in the South I'd never been. And I had decided to go to Montgomery to the EJI lynching memorial. And Susanna decided, she heard that, she said, "Oh, I'm coming too because I can do some research." And in fact, we did go, went together, we did some research. And I have to say that seeing the steel hanging fixtures with the names of Butchak and Red on them was really earth-shattering for me. And in the place itself is extraordinary. If anybody has been there, you know that. And so I I decided, this is, in a conversation with Susanna, that I would be there for her. I would help her navigate this very difficult terrain, as a white woman trying to tell the story of a white woman. And I would be a great support to her in just an advisor in navigating. And that's a role that producers play. Um, and because it's a very important story that needed to get out as I was experiencing myself. And that's really how it came to be.
Thank you so much. There's so much there that's really interesting about how this kind of came together. Um, and I want to turn it to Jessie now. So I'm sure that a lot of folks in this audience are very familiar with the story of Emmett Till, but they might not know about the Interpretive Center in Mississippi where you are involved and where you work. Can you tell us a little bit about what the Emmett Till Interpretive Center is and what your role is there?
I am Special Projects Coordinator for the Emmett Till Interpretive Center. The Emmett Till Interpretive Center is the now known name for the Emmett Till Commission. The Emmett Till Commission was formed when one of the local young men that grew up here played in the courthouse, ran 3 times to become the supervisor for the beat in which the courthouse that he played in as a child, coming into the knowledge that it was the site of where Milam Bryant was acquitted of Emmett's death. And due to his lack of knowledge of the significance of that courthouse, due to the community's silence in the Black community due to the fact that they were not allowed to talk about it, and that statement still resonates now among a certain age group. And due to people not even knowing or being taught the Emmett Till story, but the Emmett Till story became a fire in the belly for Jerome to tell this history, to tell the truth, and to apologize to Mamie and to carry the legacy of her cry of letting the world see what happened to her child, and that it was about everybody's business. So the Emmett Till Commission was formed to restore the courthouse back to 1955, but the legacy of Jerome wanted it to become a national monument and wanted it to serve as a beacon of education and truth telling. So it is now the Emmett Till Interpretive Center, a national monument in 2 states that don't even touch. And it's been a journey. It's been a journey, and so many narratives have come out of it. The silence that was written out of the courthouse. The courthouse was taken out of the piece in the lady's journey was another marker for how the systems deny the truth by just giving a blanket name of 150 individuals, 150. It's how they train the system to leave out so many points in history, so many truths in histories. And that's the way it was in this community because of the financial expectation of people to survive and to live in these communities that they all worked and lived on the plantation. They could not talk about the death of Emmett Till. Their children did not have the luxury of talking about Emmett Till, and his murder, but it went on to become a galvanization throughout the world, and it still resonates. So the silence and the way that they control the narrative is what we all have experienced because, as I said, the courthouse was written out of the narrative for over 30 years. And it was written out of the narrative within the communities and within the schools for 50 years.
I think you bring up something really important there, which is that we're not used to talking about events like this. And obviously, Emmett Till is perhaps the most famous lynching in American history. However, even that history is often shielded from folks. And I want to turn back to Constance and just ask, I would assume that this film has sparked a lot of conversations. And curious about, what type of conversations you've seen sparked by the film and kind of what are the challenges of having those conversations about lynching and racial violence with the public. And speaking of, I just want to remind everyone that we do have a Q&A. We're going to have a little time at the end for Q&A. So if you have questions, please feel free to drop those in the Q&A section. But yeah, Constance, what's the kind of, what have you seen kind of get generated by this film?
The film has been seen now in its impact phase over 100 times. It was also on the festival circuit. That's what films often do. They are invited to festivals all over the country, sometimes across the world. This film was in a number of festivals. It was not in some festivals also, and I think that part of that was that the topic was just too hot for some festivals in some locales. Um, we've won a couple of awards. Actually, we were in the Mississippi, the Magnolia Film Festival in Starkville and won Best Documentary, which was really amazing to have this film in Mississippi and to have won that award and that recognition. But the film has been shown in churches, in libraries, in museums, in uh, social organizations, and it's been shown at the Hutchins Center at Harvard, the Gilder Lehrman Center at Yale, the Maryland Lynching Memorial's annual meeting, um, Chapel of the Cross in Chapel Hill, uh, Christ Church, Little Rock, uh, lots of Unitarian churches, um, and the Iowa Black History Museum, who knew there was such a thing, but yes, there is. And it was a wonderful showing. And I think people have come away um, exactly as we had hoped they would, opening the dialogue, opening the conversation, bringing this out into the open as part of our American history. And there have been times when people who've seen the film, particularly white people, who said, I know this is true in my family. And some people who are doing research in their own families who've been inspired by this film to do that, to bring the truth to the fore. Um, I think it's also a lot of folks have talked about reparations, and what can we do? That kind of conversation. Um, Mostly African American people talk about the stories that they carry, and often tragic and emotional, but for real, very serious openness to have the conversation, to tell their stories out loud. I think the other thing that happens in a lot of the conversations is comparisons to the present. And how does this film and this history of American history uh, resonate with the current atmosphere that we're living in? I think, the lynching memorial in Montgomery tells us very severe history, but lynching is not gone away, and maybe many people talk about lynching being the jailing of so many Black people. So mass incarceration being a form of lynching. So there's always an effort to bring it to the present as well as to tell the truth about the history.
And Jessie, I want to turn it back to you. There is obviously EJI has been a massive disruption in this space in the last few years, and suddenly we're seeing some real public acknowledgement of lynching. But even then, there's a lot of resistance to that. And, you know, it's become very well known that, for instance, the marking of the river site sign was shot by bullets multiple times, had to be replaced multiple times. And so even for events like that, there's still this real challenge of talking about it in public. One thing I'm curious about that you had told us about before was about the apology that was issued there. And can you tell us a little bit about that apology and how that kind of came to be? Who was apologizing to who, and how did that play out?
Well, the apology, just like the whole movement, was questioned by both sides of the community, both sides of the county. Why are you all bringing this up? We didn't have anything to do with it. That happened way back there. And so we came together as an organization, not only to restore the courthouse back to 1955, but to understand the part that it played in history, and that how do you put it? It's not a pretty story, but it's a story that needs to be told. The apology was written and rewritten several times in order to get it to be what we had as a presentation to the family because of the resistance. We had to gather the community together under a banner of reconciliation. And it was not an apology, it was a letter to the family saying, we're sorry for the injustice that was perpetrated on your family, even though we didn't have anything to do with it, but it still needs to be said that we apologize for this, and that in hopes of that, our organization and us coming to this consensus, that would make a difference and it would spark more of a unification of the community. It was not easy. It was uh, met by resistance on both sides. We uh, we had to navigate it very carefully because I was even asked the question, why would a Black person sign an apology for the death of another Black person? And I kind of have this little imperative that if my grandchild walked up and kicked anybody, that I would apologize for it. Even though I didn't do it, it would be a learning experience for the child to understand that this is not the way that we act. This is not what we do. This is not how we treat each other. So that's why I signed it. And that's why I think most of the other Black people signed it. And the silence that was perpetrated on both sides, I come to understand. I get to ask, I get asked the question about a lot of times, how do white people feel about it? And this movie gave me that window and that door to the silence and the system that is in place that tampers down these stories, that control the narrative of these stories. But I think we're living in times now that the truth will come to the top, and that these stories have harmed not only the Black family, but it has harmed the white family as well, because everybody was not a participant, but the memories and the scars that these crimes produce have lasting and long-term effects. So us telling these stories and opening the door can have the same effect. It can be just that healing bomb for.
The fact that you brought that up, I want to talk about Jan a little bit, you know, and I think that this is something that you do see in the film is the ways that the trauma reverberates across generations and across multiple communities in different ways, obviously.
Mhm.
So turning this question back to Constance, have you met Jan, and what is she like, and what did she kind of think of this whole process and seeing this film come to be?
Thank you. I have met Jan. She came to the premiere of the film, which was at a film festival in Massachusetts, the Berkshire Film Festival. She is, a- a- and she was thrilled and delighted to be there and to experience the reception that was she received from the film. Jan is a very quiet, um, person. She rarely leaves home. She's a writer, so she's very creative and introspective. And her telling this story brought her out of her, uh, you know, her cocoon for a while. Certainly through the process of making the film. And remember, she had done a tremendous amount of research on her own before Susanna even had a conversation with her. She and her brother, who's was 100% behind her and did this research and trying to uncover the truth together. Jan has two children. They also came to the film festival opening, and they were very, very supportive of their mother. At one point, they were concerned and worried, what happens if this gets out, and there's backlash toward you. And she said, it's something I have to do. I just have to do it. So she persevered, and they supported her.
And Boot, Jack, and Red, have any relatives been found? And if so, what do they think?
That's a great question. During the filming of this, no relatives of either man were found. And we even solicited the assistance of a mutual friend of both Susanna's and mine's, Henry Louis Skip Gates of Finding Your Roots, and they were not able to find any relatives. So the film came out in 2024. So before that, the whole production period, we weren't able to find anyone. It turns out that an artist and creative who lives in Mississippi and who had family from Duck Hill, a Black woman by the name of Talamika Bryce, was able, through her family that was from Duck Hill, just dig and dig and dig, and found a relative of Red's. Red actually had a daughter at the time of the lynching, and she was 7 years old. They hid her for years, and she only became aware of the fact that all of this was going on about her father and the lynching, because Talamika Bryce was largely responsible for getting a marker placed in Duck Hill about the lynching. And that experience for Talamika was difficult because, as Jessie said, there was pushback in the community of Duck Hill. Why are you raising all this again? Why are you bringing this up? We had nothing to do with it, and we're not racist. It's the Black people that are racist. I mean, all this craziness that was coming out. But she persevered, and there is a marker in Duck Hill that she got placed, raised money for, and got it installed. And I went to Duck Hill when I was participating in the Magnolia Film Festival, because it's only about an hour away from Starkville, Mississippi. And it was an incredible experience to, first of all, be in that town, which is very small and sparsely populated, and to see that marker, so prominent, uh, recognizing the history that took place there, and respecting the two men who were murdered. I I I am aware that Telemika helped to facilitate a Zoom conversation between Jan and her brother and the family of Red. And I think they've had maybe more than one conversation, which was um, important and inspiring for both sides of the family.
Wow, that's incredible. I just want to do one last call for Q&A. We have just a few minutes before we wrap up, but I'm happy to just talk to our lovely panelists if we don't have any Q&A. One question that I would just ask. Oh, looks like we have one question in the Q&A. Amy, if you're fielding my Q&A, I can't see it. Oh, the question is, how does the Whitney Plantation tie into these two men that were lynched? We don't. this is Whitney Plantation is just sponsoring this event because this is in keeping with our mission, but there is no connection between the event of the lynching and our museum. So I just want to ask one final
No
question
direct
here.
connection.
No direct connection. Yes. Historically speaking, in terms of the process of plantation economies and things like that, yes, it is very much connected, but they did not live here. So I just want to ask one final question here. You know, something that we've talked about a lot here is what, and finding out that there's a daughter, right? That there are family members, that the loss of the person is not just the violence that happened to that one person, but it's the violence that spins out across, generations throughout the family, that it affects people in all kinds of ways. People might be forced to leave. They might, be forced to flee. And that then there's this silence that get passed down. So it causes a rupture that in many cases never gets the opportunity to heal. So what would reparations for a lynching like this really look like? And is repair possible? And that's for both of y'all. I have that question. Yeah.
Yes, you want to go?
Connie? You.
Want me to start? Okay. Well, first of all, I think you can't even begin to talk about reparations or repair without talking about the truth, about acceptance and acknowledgement of history. And because one of the things that happens, as we've talked about a little bit, is there's denial. And today there's even talk of erasure. So until we can all agree that history is history and it is etched in stone, we can't begin to talk about the healing part of it. It's acknowledging the truth. That's first and foremost from my perspective. And many people carry emotions and trauma um, that's in their DNA, as it were, as a connection to the Emmett Till uh, Center. When I was in Mississippi to show the film at the Mississippi Civil Rights Museum in Jackson, um, I took the opportunity to go to the 150th anniversary of the Clintonville massacre, and just outside Jackson. And I had the honor of meeting a woman by the name of Clottie Graves. She's an elderly woman who was a tough civil rights advocate, and she led tours of the Jackson area. Of course, that's where Medgar Evers lived and was murdered. And after we showed the film, she appeared at she attended the film showing at the Mississippi Civil Rights Museum. After we showed it, she was so emotional. She cried in response to the film because she said that when she was 8 years old, she remembered Emmett Till's murder. And from the time that she was 8 years old until after college, she slept in her parents' bed or bedroom because she was so distraught and emotionally shaken by that horrific event. And I think what's important there is that the trauma of someone's experience has to be acknowledged and felt. And so we see that, and I just was so moved by her testimony of an event she did not witness, but that stuck with her as something that was happening in this country, um, and motivated her in her own life to do civil rights work. Um, the story of lynchings is deep and historical, and I think, until we can acknowledge the truth, we can't really get um, to the to how to repair it. There is a saying that it's become sort of part of my lexicon now, is that I think it's an old Jewish saying that uh, all are some are guilty, some are guilty, but everyone's responsible.
Mm.
And so it's an answer to the question, why are we doing this? Why did we make this film? Why does the Emmett Till Center exist? It's because we have to acknowledge that we may not have done the deed. Some people may not have done the deed, but everybody's responsible for how it gets played out and undone and dealt with. So I think that's that's where I land on that.
Where I land is everything that you said, and just maybe add to it that I have a close relationship with the last living witness, and that is Reverend Wheeler Parker Jr. And I had the honor and privilege of riding the train last August the 28th. We arrived in Greenwood, Mississippi, 70 years to the day that Emmett was taken. And his strength and his leadership and his journey with me for the last 22 years has been, we have been the healing balm for him, and we support him, and he supports us. When individuals come into the center and they make reference to when they learn about Emmett Till, when they bring their children to learn, when we have bus loads from colleges, from grammar schools, when we have teachers on pilgrimage, just mapping out an itinerary to bring students here. And then the other side is that we are a national monument, and that the current administration is not very friendly to the truth and to history within itself. So it's a struggle, and it's a line which I have to navigate. But telling the truth was very important to Mamie. She gave power to the other mothers in this community and other surrounding communities that could not say, my 14-year-old child or my daughter or my husband didn't return home. But the power that she gave to let the world see, to have a trial, even though it was an acquittal, and I can still stand in this space. I can stand in the courthouse. We are so honored to become the good stewards of the barn. And when I get invited to Tulsa, Oklahoma, or when I get invited to Brownsville, Tennessee, to all these places where this history is now being acknowledged, and this community of people that support us and that we are being supported by, is the reparation, is the journey to the reparation. It's not a monetary thing, but it is a financial thing, because Black people can now stand in this space and tell their truth without fearing that their family will be kicked off the plantation, that they won't be able to take care of their family if they send them to the store, or if they look a white person in the eye, if they went through so much. And then to hear that a daughter came into the knowledge that her family was a part of something that did not sit right with her heart, I have a saying to everybody. It is the heart and the mindset of the individual that keeps me going. And that's what I worry about. And that's what I embrace. And that's what supports me and galvanized the Emmett Till story, the heart that went out of Mamie and how many hearts did she touch. And it still resonates throughout the world.
Thank you so much to the both of you, Jessie. That's so beautiful. And we're running out of time here, and so I'm going to wrap it up. I just want to thank everyone for coming to see us today, for viewing this film. Amy did put a response in the Q&A, but I just want to do a plug for the film. So Constance, can you give us a quick update on how people can watch it? If they can spread the word, how can people watch the film?
Thank you for asking that. The film is now in distribution. It's finished with its festivals. And if you go to www.myfathersname.com, you will see that there's a link to the distributor, which is gooddocs.com. And you can make arrangements through them to have the film shown in wherever you want, churches, museums, again, like Whitney Museum. The story is so universal. I mean, I know someone asked about how this related to the Whitney Museum, but it does, because it's a string, and it's a thread that carries through. So we would love to have the film shown many more times, in schools and museums and anything else. So that's my
Wonderful.
www.myfathersname.com.
Perfect. Okay, great. And if you've enjoyed this program today, our next virtual program is going to be on July 2nd. And we are going to have an author talk. I'll be in conversation with historian John Marks, whose new book, Thy Will Be Done, George Washington's Legacy of Slavery and the Fight for American Memory, was just released this week. So that is going to be a great conversation for the tangled memory of the 250th anniversary of this country, sitting with, our founding fathers and their owning of slavery, owning of enslaved people. So please come up for that. If you're local to Louisiana, I hope you will come to our 4th annual Juneteenth Festival at Whitney Plantation, June 13th. We're going to have local food vendors, music, and a book launch event by New Orleans chef Toya Bodie. So that is going to be not to be missed if you can come on out. Thank you so much, Jessie. Thank you so much, Constance, for coming to this event and joining us. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I hope all of you who joined us today will carry this message out to your communities.
Thank you.
All right.
It's been an
Take
honor and
care.
privilege. Take care.
All right.
Okay.